The airport terminal buzzed with the usual chaos of travelers rushing to catch their flights. Among the crowd, a woman in an Army combat uniform walked steadily toward Gate B7, her duffel bag slung over one shoulder. Her name was Lieutenant Keisha Williams, and after 18 long months overseas, she was finally going home. Every step felt surreal. Just 2 days ago, she'd been in Afghanistan, coordinating supply routes and leading her unit through another scorching day in the desert. Now she was back on American soil, surrounded by coffee shops and duty-free stores. The fluorescent lights felt too bright. The air conditioning felt too cold. Everything felt almost dreamlike after so many months away. Keisha checked her phone for the 100th time. Her daughter Amara had sent another text with 3 heart emojis. "Can't wait to see you, Mom. My graduation is tomorrow. I still can't believe you'll actually be there." Reading those words made Keisha's throat tighten. She'd missed so much. Birthday parties over video calls. School events she couldn't attend. Homework help given through spotty internet connections at odd hours because of the time difference. But she'd made it. Against all odds, her leave had been approved just in time. Tomorrow afternoon, she'd watch her baby girl walk across that stage and receive her high school diploma. The thought kept her going as she joined the line of passengers waiting to board Flight 447 to Dallas. The gate agent made an announcement about the flight being completely full. Keisha wasn't surprised. It was a Friday afternoon, and everyone seemed to be traveling somewhere. As she waited, she noticed other passengers glancing at her uniform. Some smiled. An elderly veteran gave her a small nod of recognition. A little boy tugged his mother's sleeve and pointed, whispering something about soldiers. These moments always felt a bit awkward. Keisha had never been comfortable with attention. She'd joined the Army at 19 because she needed a way to pay for college and wanted to serve her country. 11 years later, she'd risen through the ranks not because she sought recognition, but because she genuinely cared about her team and took her responsibilities seriously. When boarding finally began, Keisha made her way down the narrow aisle of the plane. She found her seat, 23B, right in the middle row. Middle seats were nobody's favorite, but after sleeping on a cot in the desert for months, any seat on a plane headed home felt like a luxury. She stowed her duffel bag in the overhead compartment and settled in, buckling her seatbelt. The window seat was already occupied by a sweet-looking older woman with silver hair and kind eyes. The woman smiled warmly at Keisha. "Thank you for your service, dear," she said softly. "Thank you, ma'am. I appreciate that," Keisha replied, returning the smile. The aisle seat remained empty for a few more minutes as other passengers continued boarding. Keisha pulled out her phone one more time, texting Amara that she was on the plane and would see her soon. She could hardly contain her excitement. Then he arrived. A man in an expensive-looking suit approached, checking his boarding pass with an irritated expression. He was probably in his mid-50s, with graying hair and the kind of face that looked like it rarely smiled. He glanced at the seat number, then at Keisha, then back at his boarding pass as if hoping the seat assignment would somehow change. "Excuse me," he said curtly, not making eye contact. Keisha stood up to let him pass. He squeezed by without a word of thanks, immediately claiming the armrest on Keisha's side and spreading his legs wide enough that she had to angle her knees toward the woman by the window. His laptop bag took up most of the space under the seat in front of him, leaving Keisha with barely any room for her feet. The older woman beside Keisha caught her eye and gave a subtle eye roll, as if to say, "Here we go." Keisha had to suppress a smile. As the plane filled up, the man beside her grew increasingly agitated. He huffed when a family with young children passed by. He muttered something under his breath when the overhead bins filled up near their row. When a flight attendant asked him to fully stow his bag under the seat, he complied with obvious annoyance. Keisha tried to make herself as small as possible, keeping her arms close to her body and her feet tucked under her seat. She was used to uncomfortable situations. You didn't spend nearly 2 years in a war zone without learning how to deal with difficult people in cramped spaces. This was nothing compared to what she'd been through. The flight attendants went through the safety demonstration. The captain's voice came over the intercom, welcoming everyone aboard and announcing they'd be cruising at 35,000 feet with an expected flight time of 2 hours and 40 minutes. The plane pushed back from the gate, taxied to the runway, and soon they were climbing into the late afternoon sky. Keisha felt herself relaxing as Atlanta disappeared below them. She was really going home. In less than 3 hours, she'd be on the ground in Dallas. Her sister would pick her up from the airport. Tonight, she'd sleep in a real bed. Tomorrow, she'd hug her daughter for the first time in what felt like forever. She closed her eyes, exhaustion suddenly washing over her. The adrenaline that had kept her going for the past 48 hours of travel was finally wearing off. Her body ached. Her mind felt foggy. All she wanted was to rest. But the man beside her had other plans. First, it was the sound of aggressive typing on his laptop. The keyboard clicks were sharp and angry, like he was punishing each key. Then came the heavy sighs, deep theatrical breaths that seemed designed to announce his displeasure to everyone nearby. The flight attendants came through with drinks. The older woman ordered tomato juice. Keisha politely declined, too tired to even think about drinking anything. The man ordered whiskey, downing it quickly before requesting another. Keisha kept her eyes closed, trying to drift off despite the turbulence of having such an unpleasant person beside her. She thought about Amara's graduation ceremony. What would her daughter wear? Would she be nervous? Would she cry when they called her name? Keisha had already decided that she would definitely cry no matter what. The plane hit a patch of rough air, bouncing slightly. Keisha's elbow accidentally knocked against the armrest, jostling the man's laptop. She immediately opened her eyes. "I'm so sorry," she said quickly. The man's jaw clenched. He stared at his screen, where apparently some work had been disrupted. "You've got to be kidding me," he muttered. "The turbulence just caught me off guard." "I really apologize," Keisha said sincerely. He didn't acknowledge her apology. Instead, he made a show of trying to recover whatever he'd been working on, clicking his mousepad with sharp, aggressive movements. The older woman beside Keisha shifted uncomfortably. "It was an accident," the older woman said gently, trying to help. The man shot her a look that could freeze water. "I don't recall asking for your input." The woman's face flushed, but she said nothing more. Keisha felt anger flicker inside her chest but pushed it down. She'd dealt with difficult people before. The best approach was always to stay calm and not engage. Let it pass. Don't escalate. But as she closed her eyes again and tried to find that peaceful place in her mind, she had no idea that calm would soon become impossible. The worst was yet to come. And in just a few minutes, her ability to maintain composure would be tested in a way she never could have imagined. The next 20 minutes passed in uncomfortable silence. Keisha kept her eyes closed, but sleep wouldn't come. The man beside her radiated hostility like heat from a furnace. Every movement he made seemed designed to claim more space, more territory, more dominance in their tiny shared area. She could hear him muttering under his breath. Words she couldn't quite make out, but the tone was clear enough. He was angry, and that anger was searching for a target. Keisha had learned a lot about anger during her time in the military. She'd seen what it could do when left unchecked. She'd watched soldiers lose their composure under stress and make decisions that endangered everyone. That's why the Army drilled discipline into you until it became instinct. Stay calm. Assess the situation. Don't react emotionally, but she'd also learned something else. Sometimes, no matter how calm you stayed, trouble found you anyway. The flight attendant came through the cabin again, this time offering snacks. The older woman beside Keisha accepted a small bag of pretzels. The man ordered another whiskey. His third one. Keisha noticed but said nothing. It wasn't her business how much someone chose to drink on a flight. "Ma'am, would you like anything?" the flight attendant asked Keisha warmly. "No, thank you. I'm fine," Keisha replied with a tired smile. As the flight attendant moved on, the man beside her spoke for the first time since the laptop incident. "Must be nice," he said, his words slightly slurred. Keisha opened her eyes and turned toward him slightly. "I'm sorry?" "Getting special treatment. Everyone thanking you. Everyone being nice to you." He took a sip of his whiskey. "Bet you love all that attention," the older woman gasped softly. Keisha felt her stomach tighten, but she kept her voice level. "I don't think I've received any special treatment, sir. We're all on the same flight, in the same seats." "Right," he laughed bitterly. "Play it humble. That's part of the act, isn't it?" Keisha could feel other passengers starting to pay attention. A teenage boy across the aisle had looked up from his phone. A woman in the row ahead had turned slightly in her seat. The air felt thick with tension. "I'm not sure what you mean," Keisha said carefully. "But I'd really just like to rest if that's okay." "Of course it's okay," he said with mock politeness. "It's a free country, right? Isn't that what you people are always going on about? Freedom, the here?" Older woman beside Keisha spoke up. her voice shaking slightly. "Young man, I think you should stop talking now. You're being very rude." His head snapped toward her. "And I think you should mind your own business, lady. Nobody asked you." "Sir," Keisha said firmly but quietly. "There's no need to speak to her that way. We're all just trying to get where we're going. Let's all just calm down." "Don't tell me to calm down," he said, his voice rising. "You don't get to tell me what to do. You think because you're wearing that uniform you're better than everyone else? You think that gives you the right to disrupt my work, take up my space, and then lecture me?" Keisha's heart was pounding now, but years of training kept her face neutral. "I apologized for the accident with your laptop. I haven't tried to take up any of your space, and I'm certainly not trying to lecture you. I'm just asking for basic respect." "Respect?" He laughed again, louder this time. "You want respect? How? About you respect other people's need to work? How about you respect the fact that some of us have important jobs and can't afford to lose work because someone can't control themselves?" The teenage boy across the aisle was definitely watching. Now, so was his father beside him. A flight attendant at the back of the cabin had noticed the commotion and was starting to make her way forward. Keisha took a deep breath. "I think we should end this conversation. I don't want any trouble." "Then, you should have thought about that before you—" He didn't finish his sentence. The plane hit another pocket of turbulence, rougher this time. The seatbelt sign dinged on. The captain's voice came over the intercom asking everyone to remain seated and buckled up. The jolt caused Keisha to shift in her seat. Her shoulder brushed against his arm. It was the lightest contact, barely anything at all. But it was enough. "That's it," he shouted. "I'm sick of this. You've been pushing into my space this entire flight." "Sir, that's not true," Keisha said, her voice still calm but firmer now. "I've been trying very hard not to bother you. You exist, don't you? That's bothering me." The cabin went silent. Even the hum of the engines seemed to quiet. Everyone was watching now. The flight attendant was moving faster toward their row. The older woman beside Keisha had tears in her eyes. "Please stop yelling at her," she whispered. But the man was beyond listening. His face was red, his jaw clenched, his hands gripping the armrests so hard his knuckles had turned white. Keisha could see it in his eyes. Something had broken loose inside him. All the anger he'd been carrying about his work, his life, whatever stress he was under, it was all coming out now. And she was the target. "You know what your problem is?" he said, leaning toward her. "You think you're entitled to everything. Free rides, special privileges, everyone kissing up to you. Well, not everyone buys it. Some of us see right through it." Keisha's hands were folded in her lap, her posture straight but not aggressive. She'd been trained for combat situations, for real threats, for life-and-death moments. This man was unpleasant and hostile, but she wouldn't give him the satisfaction of seeing her lose control. "Sir, I'm going to ask you one more time to please stop talking to me. I haven't done anything to you." The flight attendant finally reached their row. "Is everything okay here?" she asked, concern evident in her voice. "No, everything is not okay," the man said before Keisha could respond. "This woman has been harassing me the entire flight." "That's not true," the older woman said immediately. "He's been the one causing problems. This soldier hasn't done anything wrong." The flight attendant looked confused, trying to piece together what was happening. "Sir, if you could just lower your voice." "I don't need to lower anything. I paid for this seat just like everyone else, and I shouldn't have to deal with this kind of treatment." Other passengers began speaking up. "He's lying," someone said. "She's been completely quiet," another voice added. "He's been drinking and getting aggressive," the teenage boy's father pointed out. The man's face grew even redder. He was cornered now, and he knew it. The alcohol, the anger, the embarrassment of being called out, it was all mixing into something dangerous. Keisha could feel it coming. She'd seen this before. When someone was pushed into a corner, when they felt humiliated in front of others, they sometimes lashed out in ways that shocked everyone, including themselves. She started to turn her head, to address the flight attendant directly, to try to de-escalate the situation before it got worse. That's when it happened. His hand came across the small space between them. Fast, sudden. The sound of the slap echoed through the cabin like a gunshot. Keisha's head snapped to the side. Pain bloomed across her cheek. For a moment, time seemed to stop. The entire plane fell into shocked silence. Even the man himself looked stunned by what he'd just done. But only for a moment. The world seemed to move in slow motion. Keisha's cheek burned where his hand had made contact. She could feel the heat spreading across her face, could taste the shock and adrenaline flooding her system. Her first instinct, the one that came from years of military training, was to respond, to defend herself, to act. But she didn't move. She sat perfectly still, her hands remaining folded in her lap. Her breathing was controlled, steady, even though her heart was racing. She slowly turned her head back to face forward, her jaw tight, her eyes fixed on the seat in front of her. The silence in the cabin was deafening. Nobody seemed to know what to do. The flight attendant stood frozen in the aisle, her mouth open in shock. The older woman beside Keisha had her hand over her heart, tears streaming down her face. Across the aisle, the teenage boy had his phone out, and Keisha realized in some distant part of her mind that he'd probably recorded the whole thing. Then the man started talking, fast, panicked. "She attacked me," he shouted, looking around at the other passengers. "You all saw it. She came at me. I was defending myself." The cabin erupted. Multiple voices spoke at once, all contradicting him. "That's a lie," the older woman said, her voice stronger than before. "You hit her for no reason." "I saw the whole thing," the teenage boy said, holding up his phone. "I got it on video. He hit her." The soldier didn't do anything. A businessman several rows back called out, "That guy's been hostile since we took off." "Someone needs to restrain him," a woman's voice added. "He's dangerous." The flight attendant finally found her voice. "Sir, I need you to calm down right now." "I am calm," he shouted, which was obviously not true. "She's the one who attacked me. Why isn't anyone listening to me?" Through all of this, Keisha remained silent and still. The burning in her cheek had settled into a dull throb. She could feel everyone's eyes on her, waiting to see what she would do. Would she yell back? Would she cry? Would she demand justice right there in the moment? She did none of those things. Instead, she took another slow breath and finally turned to look at the man beside her. Her gaze was steady, calm, almost serene. When she spoke, her voice was quiet but clear enough for everyone nearby to hear. "Sir, I need to ask you something, and I'd like you to think carefully before you answer." He stopped mid-rant, caught off guard by her composure. "What?" he spat. "When you hit me just now, did you know that I'm a United States Army officer returning from active duty?" The question hung in the air. His mouth opened, then closed. He seemed confused about where she was going with this. "Because," Keisha continued, her voice still calm, "I want you to understand something. I spent the last 18 months in Afghanistan. I've been shot at. I've had mortars land near my position. I've made decisions that determined whether my soldiers lived or died. I've seen things that will probably give me nightmares for the rest of my life." She paused, letting her words sink in. The entire cabin was listening now. Even the flight attendant seemed transfixed. "I took an oath when I joined the Army. I swore to support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic. That oath means I'm supposed to protect your rights. Even your right to be rude to me. Even your right to disrespect me. I defend those rights because I believe in something bigger than myself." The man's face had gone from red to pale. He seemed to be shrinking in his seat. "But that oath also means I respect the law. And what you just did, that's assault. That's a crime. And because we're on an aircraft in flight, it's a federal crime." She turned to the flight attendant, who was watching her with a mixture of awe and concern. "Ma'am, I'd like to file a formal complaint. I'd also like you to notify the captain that a passenger has committed assault on this flight. I believe the FBI handles crimes that occur on aircraft, so I'll need information on how to file a report with them as well." The flight attendant nodded quickly. "Of course, absolutely. I'm so sorry this happened to you." "It's not your fault," Keisha said gently. "You've been nothing but professional." The man beside her suddenly came back to life. Wait. Hold on. Let's not get crazy here. It was barely a tap. You're fine. Look at you, you're fine. Keisha turned back to him, and something in her eyes made him stop talking. I'm fine because I chose to remain calm. I'm fine because my training taught me how to control my response to violence. But that doesn't make what you did acceptable. It doesn't make it legal, and it certainly doesn't mean there shouldn't be consequences. Come on, he said, and now there was a pleading tone in his voice. I've had a stressful week. I lost a major client. I wasn't thinking straight. The drinks, the cramped space, I snapped. It won't happen again. You're right, Keisha said. It won't happen again. At least not to me. The older woman beside Keisha reached over and gently squeezed her hand. Keisha squeezed back, grateful for the support. The flight attendant spoke into her radio, communicating with the cockpit. Keisha could hear fragments of the conversation. Assault on a passenger. Yes, she wants to press charges. Multiple witnesses. We have video evidence. The man tried again. Look, I'll apologize. I'm sorry, okay? I'm really sorry. Can't we just forget this happened? Keisha looked at him for a long moment. Do you have a family, sir? The question seemed to surprise him. Yes, a wife. 2 kids, why? I have a daughter. She's graduating from high school tomorrow. I haven't seen her in 18 months. I've been counting down the days, the hours until I could hold her again. Keisha's voice remained steady, but there was emotion there now, just beneath the surface. You know what I'm going to tell her when I see her? I'm going to tell her about what happened on this flight. And I'm going to tell her that when someone wrongs you, you don't have to respond with violence. You don't have to scream or lose control. You can stand up for yourself with dignity. She paused, then continued. But I'm also going to tell her that standing up for yourself means demanding accountability. It means not letting people get away with treating you like you don't matter. Because I do matter. Every person on this plane matters. And nobody has the right to put their hands on someone else in anger. The captain's voice came over the intercom. Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain speaking. Due to an onboard incident, we'll be making an unscheduled landing at St. Louis Lambert International Airport. We'll be on the ground in approximately 20 minutes. We apologize for any inconvenience this may cause. A ripple of murmurs went through the cabin, but nobody seemed upset. If anything, the other passengers seemed supportive of the decision. The man slumped in his seat, the reality of the situation finally hitting him. This is going to ruin me, he whispered. Keisha didn't respond to that. It wasn't her job to make him feel better about the consequences of his own actions. She'd done what she needed to do. She'd stood up for herself without becoming what he'd tried to make her. She'd proven that strength didn't mean matching violence with violence. As the plane began its descent toward St. Louis, Keisha closed her eyes and thought about Amara. She'd still make it to that graduation. Maybe a few hours later than planned, but she'd be there, and she'd have a story to tell her daughter about courage, dignity, and knowing your worth. The plane touched down at St. Louis Lambert International Airport with a gentle thud. As they taxied toward the gate, the cabin remained unusually quiet. Everyone knew something serious was about to happen. The man beside Keisha sat with his head in his hands, no longer making excuses or trying to argue his way out of the situation. The captain's voice came over the intercom one more time. Ladies and gentlemen, please remain seated with your seatbelts fastened. Law enforcement will be boarding the aircraft shortly. We appreciate your patience and cooperation. Keisha looked out the window past the older woman, watching as police vehicles and what appeared to be federal agents positioned themselves near the plane. Her heart was still racing, but not from fear or anger anymore. It was the adrenaline of knowing she'd stood up for herself, that she'd done the right thing even when it would have been easier to just let it go. The older woman squeezed her hand again. You're very brave, dear, she whispered. I don't know about brave, Keisha replied softly. I just know what's right. That's exactly what makes you brave. Within minutes of the plane coming to a complete stop, the forward door opened. 2 FBI agents boarded first, followed by airport police officers. They moved with purpose down the aisle, and Keisha could feel the man beside her tense up as they approached. Sir, we need you to come with us, one of the agents said firmly but professionally. The man looked up, his face a mixture of fear and resignation. This is ridiculous. I want to speak to my lawyer. You'll have that opportunity, the agent replied. Right now we need you to stand up slowly and come with us. He hesitated for a moment, then unbuckled his seatbelt and stood. As the officers guided him into the aisle, he looked back at Keisha one more time. I really am sorry, he said, and for the first time he actually sounded like he meant it. Keisha nodded slightly but said nothing. Sorry didn't erase what happened. Sorry didn't make it okay. As they escorted him off the plane, the cabin erupted in applause. Passengers clapped and some even cheered. Keisha felt her face flush with embarrassment. She wasn't looking for celebration. She'd simply done what needed to be done. One of the FBI agents remained behind and approached Keisha's row. She was a woman in her 40s with kind eyes and a professional demeanor. Lieutenant Williams, I'm Special Agent Rodriguez. I need to get your statement about what happened. Would you be comfortable talking here? Or would you prefer to come to our office at the airport? Here is fine, Keisha said. I'd like to get back in the air as soon as possible. I have somewhere important to be. Agent Rodriguez smiled slightly. I understand. We'll make this as quick as we can. For the next 20 minutes, Keisha recounted everything that had happened. The agent took detailed notes, asking clarifying questions but never making Keisha feel like she was being interrogated. Other passengers provided their statements as well, each one corroborating Keisha's version of events. The teenage boy came forward with his phone. I got the whole thing on video, he told Agent Rodriguez, from when he started yelling all the way through when he hit her. Can you send that to me? The agent asked, providing her email address. Already done, the boy said. He turned to Keisha. My dad's a veteran too. Army, served in Iraq. What that guy did to you was wrong. I'm glad you're pressing charges. Thank you, Keisha said, genuinely touched. And thank your father for his service. After all the statements were collected, Agent Rodriguez handed Keisha her card. You'll need to follow up with our office in the next few days. We'll be charging him with assault on an aircraft, which is a federal offense. With the video evidence and multiple witnesses, it's a solid case. What kind of penalty does something like that carry? Keisha asked. Up to a year in federal prison fines, and he'll definitely be put on the no-fly list. Plus, there could be civil penalties. What he did was serious, and the justice system will treat it that way. Keisha nodded, processing this information. A part of her felt bad that one moment of anger would have such lasting consequences for him. But another part of her, the part that had spent years defending the rule of law, knew that consequences were necessary. If people could assault others on planes with no repercussions, where would it end? After the agents left, the captain himself came back to speak with Keisha. He was a tall man with gray hair and a warm smile. Lieutenant Williams, on behalf of the airline, I want to apologize for what happened to you on our aircraft. That kind of behavior is absolutely unacceptable. Thank you, Captain. But it's not the airline's fault. Still, we want to make this right. We're upgrading you to first class for the remainder of your journey to Dallas, and we'll be providing you with flight vouchers for future travel. That's really not necessary, Keisha started to say. I insist, the captain said firmly. It's the least we can do. Also, I want you to know that the entire crew thinks you handled that situation with incredible grace. Most people would have lost their temper, and no one would have blamed you. But you stayed calm and professional. That's the mark of a true leader. Keisha felt tears prick at her eyes for the first time since the incident. She'd been holding it together so well, but this unexpected kindness was breaking through her defenses. Thank you, she managed to say. That means a lot. As passengers were allowed to deplane and reboard, Keisha gathered her things. The older woman who'd been sitting beside her gave her a long hug. You showed more grace and dignity than that man deserved, she said. I'm proud to have witnessed it. And I'll be telling everyone I know about the remarkable soldier I met today. Keisha hugged her back, grateful for the stranger's support when she'd needed it most. When she moved to first class, the change was stark. The seats were wider, more comfortable. There was actual legroom. A flight attendant brought her a warm towel and offered her a drink. Keisha accepted a bottle of water, still not trusting herself with anything else. As other passengers boarded for the continuation to Dallas, many of them stopped by her seat. Some thanked her for her service. Others thanked her for standing up to the man. A few shared their own stories of times they'd been mistreated and wished they'd had her courage. A young black woman, probably in her mid-20s, stopped and leaned down to speak quietly. I just wanted to say thank you. As a black woman, I know you probably face this kind of disrespect more than you should. The way you handled it with so much dignity and strength, it inspired me. You didn't let him make you into something you're not. You stayed true to yourself. Keisha felt those tears threatening again. Thank you for saying that. It means more than you know. The plane finally took off again, over an hour behind schedule, but nobody seemed to mind. As they climbed back into the sky, Keisha pulled out her phone and texted her daughter. Had a delay, but I'm in the air now. We'll still make it for your graduation tomorrow. Can't wait to see you. Love you so much. The response came back almost immediately. Love you too, Mom. Can't wait to hear about your trip. Keisha smiled. Oh, she'd have a story to tell, that was for sure. But it could wait until after the graduation. Tomorrow was about Amara, about celebrating her achievement, about being the mother who showed up even when the journey was difficult. As the plane headed west toward Dallas, Keisha finally allowed herself to relax. She'd faced down an attacker not with violence but with dignity. She'd stood up for herself while staying true to her values. And most importantly, she'd shown everyone watching that real strength wasn't about matching aggression with aggression. Real strength was about knowing your worth and refusing to let anyone diminish it. The sun was setting outside her window, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. Beautiful and peaceful, just like she felt inside. The plane landed in Dallas just after 9 in the evening. Keisha gathered her things from first class, thanked the flight crew one more time, and made her way through the airport. Her sister Brianna was waiting at arrivals, and the moment they saw each other, both women broke into tears. I missed you so much, Brianna said, hugging her tightly. 18 months is too long. Way too long, Keisha agreed, holding on just a little bit longer before pulling back. As they walked to the parking lot, Brianna noticed the slight redness still visible on Keisha's cheek. What happened to your face? Keisha sighed. It's a long story. I'll tell you in the car. During the drive to Brianna's house where Keisha would be staying, she recounted everything that had happened on the flight. Brianna listened in stunned silence, her hands gripping the steering wheel tighter with each detail. He actually hit you, Brianna finally said. In front of everyone? In front of everyone. And you just stayed calm? Girl, I would have lost my mind. Keisha smiled slightly. That's what the Army trains you for. Besides, losing my mind wouldn't have helped anything. It would have just made me look like the aggressor. You're a better woman than me, Brianna said, shaking her head. I'm proud of you, but I'm also so angry that happened to you. I'm okay, Keisha assured her. Really? It could have been worse, and at least there will be consequences for him. When they arrived at Brianna's house, Keisha finally got to hug her daughter. Amara came running out the front door before Keisha even got out of the car. The embrace lasted several minutes, both of them crying happy tears. You're really here, Amara kept saying. You're really here. I promised I would be, Keisha said, cupping her daughter's face in her hands. Nothing could keep me from seeing you graduate. That night, Keisha slept in a real bed for the first time in months. Despite everything that had happened, or maybe because of it, she slept deeply and peacefully. The next morning was a whirlwind of activity. Amara's graduation was at 2 in the afternoon. They spent the morning taking pictures, doing Amara's hair, and making sure her graduation gown looked perfect. Keisha tried not to check her phone too often, but she couldn't help noticing that she'd received several missed calls from reporters and messages from people she didn't know. What's going on? Brianna asked, noticing Keisha's puzzled expression. I don't know. A bunch of people are trying to reach me. Brianna picked up her own phone and started searching. Within seconds, her eyes went wide. Oh my God, Keisha. You're viral. What? Brianna turned her phone around. The video from the plane was everywhere. News websites, social media platforms, everywhere. The headline on one major news site read, Soldier responds to mid-flight assault with incredible composure. Keisha's stomach dropped. How did this get out so fast? The kid who recorded it must have posted it, Brianna said, scrolling through comments. Keisha, there are millions of views already, and look at what people are saying. The comments were overwhelmingly supportive. People were praising Keisha's restraint, her dignity, her powerful words to the man who'd hit her. Women, especially women of color and veterans, were sharing their own stories and saying how inspiring they found Keisha's response. But there were also news outlets requesting interviews, advocacy groups wanting her to speak at events, and even a few book publishers reaching out through social media. This is too much, Keisha said, setting her phone down. Today is about Amara, not about me. Mom, it's okay, Amara said, looking at her own phone. This is actually really cool. My mom is a hero. I'm not a hero, sweetheart. I just did what anyone should do. But that's the thing, Amara said seriously. Not everyone does what they should do. A lot of people would have either stayed quiet and let him get away with it, or they would have fought back and made things worse. You did neither. You stood up for yourself the right way. Keisha looked at her daughter, seeing the young woman she'd become in the time they'd been apart. When did you get so wise? I learned from the best, Amara said, hugging her mom. The graduation ceremony was beautiful. Keisha sat in the audience, her heart swelling with pride as she watched her daughter walk across the stage. When they called Amara's name and she received her diploma, Keisha stood up and cheered louder than anyone else in the auditorium. She didn't care who was watching. This was her baby girl, achieving something wonderful, and she'd made it home to see it. After the ceremony, as families gathered outside taking pictures, several people recognized Keisha from the video. Some asked for photos with her. Others simply thanked her for setting an example. A few veterans approached to shake her hand and tell her she'd represented the military well. One older black woman, probably in her 70s, approached with tears in her eyes. I lived through the civil rights movement, she said. I was there for the sit-ins, the marches, all of it. What you did on that plane, standing up for yourself with such dignity, it reminded me of why we fought so hard. You made us proud. Keisha felt overwhelmed by the woman's words. Thank you. That means more than you know. That evening, after all the graduation festivities, Keisha finally sat down with Amara and told her the full story of what had happened on the plane. She explained the fear she'd felt, the anger, the decision to stay calm, and why she'd chosen to press charges. I want you to understand something important, Keisha said. What happened to me wasn't fair. It wasn't right, and it definitely wasn't my fault, but I had a choice in how to respond. You could have hit him back, Amara said. I could have, and part of me wanted to, but that wouldn't have made anything better. It would have just put me on his level. It would have let him drag me down to where he was. So you stayed above it. I stayed true to who I am, Keisha corrected gently. That's different from staying above it. I'm not better than anyone else. But I know my values. I know what I believe in. And I wasn't going to let one angry man force me to compromise those things. Amara was quiet for a moment, processing this. I think I understand. It's like you always told me. You can't control what other people do, but you can control how you respond. Exactly. And I also wanted to make sure there were consequences for him. Not because I wanted revenge, but because actions have to mean something. If people can do harmful things and just walk away, then what's the point of having rules at all? Over the next few days, the story continued to spread. The man who'd hit Keisha was identified in the media, and his company released a statement saying they'd terminated his employment. He was charged with assault on an aircraft and eventually pleaded guilty, receiving 6 months in federal prison, probation, anger management classes, and a permanent ban from flying with that airline. Keisha gave one interview to a major news network, mainly because she wanted to control her own narrative. In that interview, she emphasized that she wasn't special. She was just a person who'd been put in a difficult situation and tried to handle it with integrity. I think a lot of people feel powerless when someone treats them badly, she told the interviewer. They feel like they have to either fight back or stay silent. But there's a third option. You can stand up for yourself calmly. You can demand respect without losing your own dignity. You can let the system work the way it's supposed to work. The interview resonated with millions of people. Keisha received thousands of messages from people sharing how her story had inspired them to handle their own difficult situations differently. But for Keisha, the most important moment came a week after she'd returned home. She and Amara were having dinner together, just the two of them, when Amara said something that made everything worthwhile. Mom, I've always been proud that you're a soldier. I've always thought it was cool that you serve our country. But after seeing how you handled what happened on that plane, I'm proud of who you are as a person. You showed me what real strength looks like. It's not about being the loudest or the toughest. It's about knowing who you are and not letting anyone make you forget it. Keisha reached across the table and took her daughter's hand. That's the best thing anyone has ever said to me. And it was true. Awards and recognition were nice. Justice being served was satisfying. But knowing that her daughter had learned something valuable, that she'd modeled the kind of person she wanted Amara to become, that was the real victory. Sometimes the battles that matter most aren't fought with weapons. Sometimes they're fought with words, with dignity, with the simple but powerful act of refusing to become less than who you are, even when someone tries to drag you down. Keisha had won that battle, and in doing so, she'd taught her daughter and thousands of others that you could stand up for yourself while standing on principle. That was a lesson worth any struggle.